an organic chemist by training. I have a biochemistry minor as both an undergraduate and graduate student. I came to St. Louis to work for a major chemical company here. And during the first year I was here, I met a woman who became my wife eventually. And before we got married, we had an agreement, which was that if I couldn't maintain the type of work I wanted to do, we would leave St. Louis. And after several years, that job turned out to be something I didn't want to stay with. I don't mind mentioning the company, there's just no purpose to it. There is a huge number of chemists out in this country and in the world who have worked for them over the years, and I think most of them would say the same thing. It's not a great place to work. And so I was forced with wanting to leave, which meant finding a job somewhere else, or trying to do something else. And the idea of cleaning phonograph records was one of them, because at that point in time, I was well aware, as most people were, that there were a whole bunch of products in the market, but none of them were really worth a damn. And the moment I started to look into the issue, you find out that most of those products are basing what they're doing on alcohol, which is not inherently bad, as people seem to have decided. It's just that it's not effective, and when used in excess, it's capable of drying out the surfaces to an extent, and that just makes them a little bit more brittle and susceptible to excessive wear. So my arrangement when I got married was that if I couldn't stay employed in St. Louis, we would leave. And when that time came, she had reasons why she wasn't going to leave town, and they were valid, although I didn't like the result. And so I had to find something to do, and that's where the Miracle Record Cleaner came from. In the beginning, it was just, you have an idea, and the idea was that you needed primarily to get rid of the mold release wax. If you don't have that mold release there at the time of pressing, you can't separate the stamper cleanly from the matrix itself, and that was the whole reason for it. But that's a material that's kind of tough to get rid of without being harsh. And so that was the key feature of the products, was getting rid of the mold release wax. And it turns out that if you can get rid of that material, then you'll clean everything else off. I had a decent idea what I was looking for in a surfactant, but I didn't know that much about what was out there. And so the big issue with it was initially identifying that surfactant base. And because it needed to be obviously thorough, it needed to be potent, it also had to be in the long term safe. And it needed to be highly water soluble. The amount of smell had to be kept to a minimum. Establishing how much is a hit and miss thing in terms of the concentrations that were really going to work. The idea was to be able, from the beginning, to be able to clean both vinyl and shellac with the same product. And the vinyl was not that hard to deal with. It was making sure that we didn't damage the shellac. And that was where the modification came through, because there is a need for, I'll just refer to it as some salt of alcohol inside that blend to make it as effective as it can be. It has to do with solubilizing different materials and just the nature of the cleaning components themselves. And it took a while to settle on that, because the more common alcohols you would think of are a little too volatile, like ethanol itself. And if you were going to keep opening and closing a bottle of that, there wouldn't be a lot left on the last third of the bottle. And so, there are a lot of formulas out there when we got started that were already using isopropyl alcohol and water on records. But if you've got a decently set up mid-fi system and you use that versions of that product, you'll notice a brittleness to the sound. And it doesn't go away after a few plays. It wasn't to my ears anyway, and to others who were doing the listening. And so I went back and was looking for a product that had broad-based cleaning power and high water solubility. And the one that we used was the one that ended up doing the match. So it's the whole system worked, and to this day it's still the same thing. Most audiophiles know better than I do, and so they're going to do whatever they want, and they'll believe what they want. You can use a vacuum cleaning machine of your choice, or you can use these products manually and wick the fluids up. At least it gives somebody the option who doesn't want to go out and buy a machine a way to clean records. And if you take your time and you do it right, the end result's the same. We sell a family of brushes for wet cleaning that are mated to the record diameter and the label size, because both those were variable across the history of recorded sound. And so the idea was to mate the brush cleaning surface to maximize its coverage, but not to be wasteful of the fluid, to keep the label from getting wet and keeping fluid from going over the edges of the record and making a mess around it. So there was a common amount of extra length given to those dimensions to allow for that. And the pads were cut appropriately to each different type of record size. And that way the whole process is efficient and not messy. The key thing about the brush and the pad is that force is your enemy. You're only applying enough gentle down pressure so that you're confident the tips of the fibers are staying in intimate contact with the surface, and no more pressure than that. That way the tips are riding in the upper half of the groove, and the rest of that space is filled with fluid. And that's the trick. And even if it's a nasty record, it's still going to take the same thing. It's not you applying physical force, and that's what you have to get people to realize. That's what you're not doing. I think I still have the code upstairs. I made iron-on stencils of the logo, of pictures of the products, and so forth. And I laid them out on a lab coat. And I went to CES with brochures. No samples, just with brochures. I did have some samples in my room, but I wasn't running around trying to hand out samples. I thought that at the time I really didn't feel like I had the resources to give away 50. You can't give away a half a 4-ounce bottle. You've got to give them a bottle. And I didn't really see me getting my money back for doing that kind of thing. But it infuriated the people at CES. I mean, they were really, these people, they were, if they could have gotten away with it, I think they would have hauled me out. They were mad. But to this day, people remember that lab coat. Chad's the first dealer I went to. I know he's crazier than a loon sometimes. And I actually saw him before I knew him, and so I'd seen him running around with these big, huge satchels of used records, and he knew what he was doing. He was very shrewd about the whole thing. And I'd heard that about him. I mean, I knew about Acoustic Sounds like I knew about the other mail order houses, but I'd never had a real opportunity to get together with him. And it wasn't until I finally went out there, and he liked the product. He saw it for what it was worth. He latched onto it quite quickly. So there was nothing not to like, and it's good. I mean, it's been good for me. It's been good for him. It's good.